but me. Anyone else but me. Anyone else but me. No, 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 don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but me. Till I come marching home.
Welcome back to Fireside Chats with Grandma, week number 9. Happy almost summer, and this week we're going to be talking about some summer-related activities from Grandma's past, great-grandma's past. So starting out, Grandma's going to tell us about her very first camping trip when Grandpa came back from the war.
Yep, I believe it was in 1946 or 47. We came home from the war. We'd gotten settled in our little house on 99th Street. And he took his mother and father and me and the 2 babies back to Colorado. And I don't know exactly where it was, but we were camping. And they told me to go get those dried things over there. What did they call them? Those cow pies. So little old me, not knowing what a cow pie went over and got one. Then when they told me what they were, I dropped them. Which is what cow pies are, what cows let loose. And they dry out, become real dry. And when you can't find wood, you can use them to burn. So that's what they were doing to start a fire with. So where we were wasn't too woody or anything. And me being the city girl didn't know anything about cow pies. But I learned. And then when I cannot quite remember, I think we had what they call mummy bags from the servicemen had. You squeeze into them like a mummy. So Stan dug a little trench in the ground and put pine needles and tiny branches in the little trench, and then laid the sleeping bag, mummy bag, on top and said, "There's your bed." And I looked at them and I said, "Really?" Yes. So I crawled in, and it was really pretty good. I was pretty comfortable and slept all night. And I think we have an old army tent that we put up. And so the babies, I think, more or less had an old army cot, and they slept on that. So that was my introduction to camping. And they fished for trout, and I didn't know anything about that, and that was my first experience with that. And what a thrill when you put that line in the water and feel that little trout jiggle the end of the line and pull it out like that and catch a fish. So I thought, I like this. I didn't like picking up cow pies, but had a good time eating the trout, which is the first time I'd ever tasted trout. So good when you got it and put it right on the fire after you catch it. Nothing like it.
Well, Grandpa put you on the pine needles, and he put the kids on a cot.
Well, I really can't remember. We might have put them both in a mummy bag. I can't remember. That's been a few years ago. But eventually they did have cots or something that we put them on. Or sleeping bags, mummy bags, which you could buy real cheap for $4 or $5 at the Army surplus.
I had to put the kids on the needles. So our topic continues on to retirement days. There finally came a time when Grandpa stopped purchasing property and you finally started treating yourself out to some nice places and things, and your first big vacation was a cruise. Tell us about your first adventure.
Our best man, Marty Hadeline, and another couple were going on a cruise, and we were at a party with them. And they said to Stan, "Why don't you come too?" And he was feeling pretty good that night. He said, "Yeah, we'll go too." And so then I was so excited because I always wanted to travel on a ship and go travel, which my career came to a halt during the war when I had Louise, and I couldn't leave that baby alone, and so I always wanted to travel. So then when the time rolled around to pay the fare, which was around $500, I guess, for the two of us for the cruise, he sort of thought, well, you know, one of the kids just might need the money. I went, what? I'm getting a job. And he said, what? I said, if you think I have worked all these years and now we have a chance to go on a cruise on a boat. He said, but I've been on a boat. And I said, well, I haven't. You really want to go? I said, yes, I do. So he said, okay. So we went, and it was so much fun. And it was so much fun. He never said another word when I'd suggest going somewhere. Okay, let's go. When do we go?
So on the cruise, did anything happen that was exciting?
Well, just as it was exciting to be, we went to the Caribbean. It was exciting to be in the Caribbean. It was beautiful. The weather was the Norwegian line, very tasteful and nice. And of course, Marty and Stan loved it because every night for dinner they'd have 2 steaks. And I loved it because at midnight you could go and have more desserts. And of course, I love desserts with whipped cream. And then, of course, just sailing around the Caribbean for a whole week and stopping at ports and going shopping. Just no care, nothing. Mumsy was taking care of whoever was left home. I think it was Ellen and maybe Mark, and they were in high school. So anyhow, that was my first real vacation. I just loved it. Real paid for vacation. Had a lot of camping ones.
So another thing that comes around this time of year is graduation. And way back when you graduated from a lot of grades, but we're going to talk about graduating from high school today.
Okay. I went to 3 different high schools because it was the Depression. And my folks kept moving because of the job situation. My first high school was St. Mary's Academy, a Catholic high school. And when I went in the 9th grade and was sitting there so proud of myself, Sister looked at me. She said, stand up. And I stood up. And she said, how old are you? And I told her I was 14. Well, you look like you're in the 3rd grade. I was so embarrassed. But I was 14, and I was what they called a red tie. They had to wear a black uniform with a white collar, and the red ties were the freshmen that year, and each year it would move up. Well, we had to move. So I ended up going the next year to Manual Arts High School. And I had to go on the streetcar, which is just like a train car, only one car that goes on tracks down the main street of a big city, which was Los Angeles. And then I get to, which is Manual Arts was a big, big high school. And I was sort of, not overwhelmed, but it was quite different because we had to walk different classes, different buildings. But I managed and did well. And by the 3rd year, we'd moved again. So I had to transfer to Fairfax High School. And so I luckily moved in and met some very nice girls. And ended up, the 6 of us made it, had a good time. We joined what they call the California Club, which wasn't a camping, but it was more where they'd take us to a high school retreat, sort of up in the mountains, and we could sleep on cots in this school place where kids could go. And I managed to stay there for 2 years and graduate. I even got to be what they called commissioner of clubs. I never did anything, but I was the commissioner of all the different clubs. And I graduated. We had a nice group of kids, boys and girls, and lots of times they'd come over to my house, and one of the guys was a great musician. He'd play the piano, and we'd all stand around and sing, or we'd make taffy and pull it. And we graduated. The boys wore white coats and dark pants, and the girls wore formals. So I had my one formal, which was aqua blue and an almost off shoulder. And there were 500 of us in the graduating class at Fairfax. It was a big high school. So I graduated from Fairfax High School in Los Angeles. But it was, my sister couldn't take moving always. She got out in junior year and just went to work. Well, I finished all 4 years, and so did my brother. It was outside, and we were down in the field, and the families were up in the bleachers. And I imagine my mother, probably my father wasn't there, because he probably had to work, but I don't remember him being there. But I think my mother and sister and brother were there. But we all wore formals, and then I think they had a dance in the gym after. But you didn't wear cap and gowns in those days, at least. I think that was mainly done then in colleges. Well, when I finally got settled in 2 years in high school, I think there was 5 friends. These gals took me in, and they were really good friends. Dorothy, Philo, Lorraine, Kay Stack, Rosary Simmons, and Eileen. And we stayed friends all through our lives. Most of them even came to my 50th. And there's still, one of them is still living in Colorado, Lorraine. She had 1 girl. I think Kay Stack had 6 children. Dorothy had 1 girl. And Eileen, I'm not sure how many children she had. But we stayed in touch all those years after high school. And the boys, they were sort of in a gang with us. We had a good time. We enjoyed singing songs and things around the piano. And there was none of this going steady stuff. There was a little bit of that, but most of us didn't like that. We liked being in groups in high school, doing things together. And I think Grandpa was a lot the same. He was in the football group. And the only girlfriend I ever heard about was named Lucille Brown, I think. And she lived in a mining camp, so he did. And his mother didn't want him going with a Catholic girl. She was Methodist. It's very funny because he and David both ended up marrying Catholic girls. But one time Bebop said to her, how come they don't get married in our church? And she just looked at him and laughed. He'd never gone to church in his life.
Well, that wraps it up for week number 9, Fireside Chats with Grandma. Happy graduation to those graduating. And we'll see you next week for week number 10 by the fire with Grandma.